There we are. Welcome, everybody. Let's see. I'm going to share my screen. We'll see how this works.
Andy Martin, ladies and gentlemen. Andy Martin.
Yeah. So my name is Andy Martin. I am. Is the screen sharing or no? Not yet. There we go. How's that? Is that working for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I am the president of the Johnson County Affordable Housing Coalition. If you do not know me, that's my official role here. I'm also the owner of Martin Construction Remodeling Company here in town, and I'm a member of the HBA, which is how I got roped into the Johnson County Affordable Housing Coalition in the first place, and then it turned out to be absolutely wonderful. So I'm honored to be here today. Um, Welcome to everybody. And I think I'm going to start here with just some updates from the coalition.
Andy, you're, yep, there you go.
Oh, was it showing? It shows the actual literal screen. That's frustrating. All right.
You're good now.
Yeah, but now I have to find my email. So pardon my stuff. All right. So as you can tell, I'm used to moderating these things, and I'm flawless at it. But so the long and the short of it is that the coalition is very busy because Jessica keeps us hopping and does a great job of making sure that we're busy. As you can see, she does a lot of outreach and education. We projects and programs. We got requests for you too, but just real quickly, the manufactured housing residents' rights. We had Residents' Rights Day on the Hill on February 6th. The coalition, along with other organizations, manufactured housing residents, talked to legislators about how laws are needed to protect residents from out-of-state park owners. If you're not aware, that is and has been for several years now a problem in our state. And so we're trying to head it off there at the state level. With that, Iowa Ideas in-depth week on homelessness. Last week, the Gazette hosted daily panels on persons experiencing homelessness in the state. Each panel had a different focus on how every level from personal to policy can be changed to better help those most vulnerable in our community. And so coalition board member Christine Hayes from Shelter House and our executive director Jessica Andino were invited to participate on the panels. And you can find the recordings from last week. It doesn't say it on there, but it's easy to get to. They are at iowaideals.com. And there will be an associated conference in October as well. Follow up there. The Opportunity Group is a housing legislative subgroup, and we have closely been watching proposed legislation related to housing at the state level. And our friends from the Des Moines area have invited us to participate in a legislative subgroup that tracks these proposals and interprets them into what it would mean for tenants, homeowners, and all residents if these proposals become law. So that's kind of keeping an eye on what's happening there. The partnership meetings for collaboration. So, you know, every week or every month, Jessica meets with various groups. In this case, it was Community Crisis Services, the Center for Worker Justice from Eastern Iowa, the Housing Trust Fund of Johnson County, and the Housing Fellowship. We continue to create and maintain partnerships with organizations that provide direct services because we're not a direct service provider ourselves, but we work with these organizations that do provide it to low-income residents. This month, we were able to meet with Community, the CWJ, the Housing Trust Fund, and the Housing Fellowship to discuss possible collaborations that we can do together to meet their needs. So yeah, she keeps moving there. And in addition to that, we've got projects and programs in place. We had our first one-year review with Jessica, and we are all very delighted that she works with us, and we're happy to have had her for this past year as we continue to grow and expand the coalition's efforts in Johnson County. There's also the Gather Iowa project in Coralville. That's that proposed housing development thing there. And we've got Grinnell College students that are on board again this semester, the last semester and this semester both, are working with the coalition. They're collecting more resident interviews from the residents in Coralville's Gather Iowa development. And these preliminary findings will be presented next month at the Public Health Conference of Iowa. And Jessica will be there for that too. And then we've got the municipal and county ARPA funding, and we're working with staff and elected officials at the city and at Johnson County to advise on how best to use the earmarked affordable housing funds through ARPA and other pots of money. We're doing our best there. The seniors and students co-housing group is an interesting thing that we're looking at, trying to get into the area. So just this past week, we have a working group on that, and they met with a service provider in the Boston area who they work on matching guests and hosts together for co-housing. We think this is a promising lead, and we're going to see if we can implement their system in Iowa City. Our focus would be on connecting graduate students and international students with hosts associated with the university. So either alumni or current professors and staff or retired professors and staff. Seems to be a natural fit for our area. And then we've got also coming up the Spring Social on March 21st. We hope that everybody here today is planning on joining us at the Spring Social. It'll be a lot of fun. Last year was fun. This will be our second Spring Social, so it's a new event essentially. But we think it's a great way to shake off winter, come together, and it's a great location there at the Green Room. We'll be amongst friends who all care about affordable housing in Johnson County. So it's Thursday, March 21st from 4 to 6 at the Greenhouse. Pardon my stuff. I was going back about 20 years to the Green Room. So at the Greenhouse, which is across from Iowa City Hall. And members of the coalition will be there. And if you are a member of the coalition, you will get a free drink ticket. And so you will get a delicious beverage of your choice. So that's kind of the next upcoming projects and programs that we have in going on this spring. And then we do have a couple of requests of you. Please keep up to date on the Iowa legislature. There's a lot of action coming out of the chambers this year related to affordable housing and other key issues in our state. So make sure you're staying up to date on these proposals as we continue with this legislative session. We just got through the first funnel, I believe. If you have questions about a specific bill, feel free to contact us and we can answer questions to the best of our ability, or we can get you in contact with people who are more well-versed in that. So we're happy to help you keep up to date there. And then the second request that we have is please take the Johnson County Affordable Housing Coalition survey. It's at tinyurl.com. Is it a slash or a backslash? JCAHC survey 24. And unfortunately, I don't think that's a link, but we can provide that to you. It's a short, easy survey. I think I already did it and it didn't take too long. And we will be using these results to inform our future priorities and endeavors at the coalition. So please do that. All right, let's get into the meat of things here. We have got wonderful guest speakers today, so you don't have to listen to me the entire hour, thankfully. We get to hear not just from one, but two great guest speakers from housing trust funds here in Iowa. I'm going to introduce them backwards so that Ellen, who will speak first, you get to hear from last. But Matt Hauge is the Outreach and Communications Director at Polk County Housing Trust Fund. The Polk County Housing Trust Fund is a qualified local housing trust fund defined in Iowa law and was established in 1995 by the Polk County Board of Supervisors. They're the comprehensive planning, advocacy, and funding organization for affordable housing in Polk County. So he will speak second, but first we will have Ellen McCabe. She is the Executive Director of the Housing Trust Fund of Johnson County. I'm sure many of you know her, but if you don't, or what the Housing Trust Fund does, the Housing Trust Fund of Johnson County is a private nonprofit organization incorporated in 2002 by area leaders who recognize both the need to address the lack of affordable housing in Johnson County as well as the opportunities represented by the creation of the State Housing Trust Fund and the campaign to create a National Housing Trust Fund. They promote affordable housing in Johnson County, Iowa, by providing public education, balanced information, and opportunities for dialogue and support affordable housing by providing funding for affordable home ownership, rental, and transitional housing and emergency shelter needs. So please welcome Matt and Ellen. And like I said, Ellen, I believe you are the first to speak.
True.
So
That is true.
do I have to stop sharing? Probably, don't I?
Can anyone see my screen?
I can see your screen.
Thank you. Brianna's coming in. Okay. So welcome. Thank you for this opportunity. I was joking with Jessica earlier that I used to get my own whole hour, but this is great to have a balance of learning about what's going on at the center of our state also. So I like to start with a little brief introduction as to why it is we have to be here. So I come at this from two angles. The first angle is the need for housing that is affordable based on income. So this is the most current information available. It's based on data from HUD. It looks at incomes in 2020. So there's a lag here, and this, I always have to add, this probably doesn't really reflect the impact of the pandemic. So stay tuned. Here's what we're looking at. In terms of the extremely low income, we have 12,300 households among us, or 20% of all the households in Johnson County. And unfortunately, that was an increase of 300 households from the year before that. So unfortunately, we are most affected individuals is on the rise. And then in the next group, which is called very low income, we're looking at 13.5% of the population falling into the very low income. And then the top of the low income, if you will, what we just call low, is 50 to 80% of the area median income. And we have 10,000 households among us. The groups here that you're seeing represent senior citizens, people with disabilities, people with jobs that do not pay a living wage, bank tellers, para-educators in the schools, grocery clerks, people that we interact with all day long, people that take care of our kids, take care of our dogs. We interact with individuals who fall into the category of needing housing that's affordable every single day. All told, the trust fund only serves people with incomes below 80% of the area median income, half the population around us, or 30,000 households is what we're talking about here. And these numbers get overwhelming to us at times. The next way we look at the need for affordable housing is that through the lens of being cost burden. So in an ideal world, we're paying no more than 30% of our income on our housing expenses. That is very easy if you have a very large income. You can spend a lot on your housing if you have a large income, but that is not the case. Again, most recent data, 2020. So people who are spending more than 50% of their income, but more than 30% of their income, but less than 50% of their income, we just call them plain old cost burdened. And we have 8,800 households among us. And unfortunately, there was an increase of 1,100 households in that 1 year that fall into the struggling category. The second group that I call out here is those who are paying more than 50% of their income, extremely cost burden. Take your salary, cut it in half, and put half of it towards your housing, and then try to go buy your groceries, buy your health insurance, whatever it is that you need to pay the electric bill and so forth. And so we have 9,700 households in that category. Better news, so 255 fewer households over the prior year, but 18,500 households among us we can put our money on are struggling with their housing expenses, or 30% of the households among us. So this is the backdrop to why we're focusing on affordable housing as we do day in, day out. The Housing Trust Fund is going to celebrate its 20th anniversary this year, founded in 2004 by very dedicated, very smart people who saw that the state was going to make money available through the Iowa Finance Authority and jumped on it and organized the trust fund. The trust fund's only purpose is to promote and support, and another way to say support is fund, housing that is affordable in Johnson County for people with low incomes. And one of the unique things I'll be interested to hear from Matt, if they do loan funds, approximately 85% of the money that goes out from the trust fund comes back for at least one more use. So that's the beauty of the revolving loan fund. It's an investment in housing for people with low incomes that gets a second wash, if you will, and oftentimes more than a second wash. The trust fund strives to be innovative. We try to be a flexible source of funding. We often serve as the funding gap. So people put together their projects, but there's just not enough money, and the trust fund can be a source of funding to fill that gap. We don't care if we're first dollar, last dollar. All we care about is that there needs to be more housing available. Our priorities, if you will, are providing assistance to those with the lowest incomes. We welcome new partners. We prioritize serving people who have a barrier in addition to having a low income. And so you'll see that reflected in some of the names of the current projects that we have going. We see that what we're doing is leveraging funding for the creation and preservation of housing. So if we invest $200,000 in something, the entire project is most likely way higher than that. So we are helping to leverage other resources with trust fund support. And we work with developers. We work with not-for-profits. Negotiating isn't the right word necessarily, but we strive to get the longest term of affordability, and that we hold them to the income levels that they propose to serve and so forth. Our major funders are the Johnson County Board of Supervisors. They weigh in at $700,400. The City of Iowa City comes in $400 lower than that. How about that? $700,000. I'm trying to get them to compete against each other. Who wants to go to 800? The Iowa Finance Authority, the original funding source for the trust fund, weighs in at about $450,000. It is possible that there is legislation this year that might increase that by $100,000 or so for the trust fund. So we're very much keeping an eye on that possibility. The city of Coralville and the city of North Liberty contribute each year, as do the financial institutions. And this mostly takes the form of me applying for grants to get money to support the trust fund's work. So we work with Green State Credit Union, Bank of the West, which has recently become BMO, US Bank, Heartland Bank. Hopefully I'm not forgetting. Our programs, we have two programs. One you don't hear very much about is the owner-occupied rehabilitation program, and we're able to help about 10 to 15 households a year with, they own their home, but they don't have enough income to take care of the home in some instances. So they need some rehabilitation. We do this through two mechanisms. We use this Federal Home Loan Bank program, and that provides assistance in the form of forgivable loans up to households with incomes below 80% of the area median income. And then we work with Iowa Habitat for Humanity with their Helping Hands program, and they apply for grant funding from the trust fund. And this is to assist households with extremely low incomes, below 30% AMI. So in this program, it's emergency repair. People need a furnace, people need plumbing repair, electrical repair, things like that. We just made a payment this morning for a program that helped a woman get an accessible shower, an accessible toilet, and a ramp built at her manufactured housing. So You don't hear a lot about it because we're not able to help as many households as we would like, but it's very important work. The revolving loan fund, you hear probably more about. This is where we make funding available 4 times a year. We have an operations committee, crackpot, finance people, bankers, accountants that help us determine how much money to make available each season, if you will. So I tell people, if the seasons are changing, the trust fund is probably making funding available. We like to be responsive when opportunities are available rather than just having funding once a year. Then applications are submitted. I provide assistance to applicants. I don't want to say handhold, but I provide some standardized training on how to put together the best application. What does it really mean to borrow money from the trust fund? What are you committing to in terms of income, qualifying people to live in the housing, and so forth. Then we have a distribution committee, again, rock stars, 1 or 2 are on the call here, who go through these applications and lend their expertise to the process of making funding available. And they then recommend projects to the full board, and the board determines which awards. And then 4 times a year on a Friday morning, I get to call people and either tell them that what they applied for was not eligible, or that they should apply again and provide feedback to how to improve their application, or that they were funded. So pretty cool job that I get to have here. Just an example of a project. So we have a newer project in Coralville called Coral North. Here's a picture of what the main great room looks like. This is 2 bedrooms, in-unit laundry, 2 bathroom units. The applicant received $450,000 loan from the Housing Trust Fund. We did use Johnson County money for this project, $450,000. It costs $12 million to build this project. So what's going on here is both the $450,000 to make it possible, but when we give them an award letter, that tells the state of Iowa, hey, look, their money is where their mouth is. This is needed, and this is quality, and this is what the trust fund's willing to get behind. It used to get points in the application process, but now it's more like a seal of good housekeeping, if you will. Anybody knows what that is. So $12 million of housing for a $450,000 investment. That's what we call leveraging resources to help the members of our community. This will be 30 years income restricted. So for 30 years, and probably longer, but at least for 30 years, what we were able to work with the developer, 8 units will serve the extremely low income. 15 units will be for the next level up, which is still extremely low, and then 21 units below 60% AMI. So 44 supported units in this development. When it happened, when we learned who's actually living there, we can see that the income levels of the very lowest people are extremely low. 3% of the area median income, up to 10% of the area median income in that first group of 8 households. 65% of the people that moved in had female-headed households. 45% of the households had someone with a disability. And 45% of the households had a person or a household of color. So we don't get to know this up front, but we get to see on the back end that what we're doing is really helping those who have the greatest need. And now I'm getting a phone call. Okay. This past year, we paid out, we helped 100 households. That's what was paid out. And and we covered the continuum of housing. So we support the Affordable Housing Coalition with 5%, $500,000 donation each year to help with their advocacy. We helped people experiencing homelessness via new shelter and shelter rehab. So 33% of the money that we paid out last year went to those who have essentially 0% income. Supportive housing, new and rehabilitation. So this is housing for people with low incomes, generally below 30% of the area median income, but they don't just get the housing, they also get supportive services, case management, if you will, other services. So 44% of the money that we paid out last year went to supportive housing, and 3% went to rental preservation, which is an important thing. Better to take a unit and keep it affordable. It's much cheaper to do so than to build or to buy. And then home ownership, both through preservation and rehabilitation, 19% of the funding, and 208,000 helped those 16 households that I referred to. So the total investment was $1,085,000. Just that was last year what we wrote checks for. I'd like to tell you about where we are this year. So mid-year, which was last month, we've made 5 awards or commitments to projects. We've committed just in the first 6 months of the year, $3.1 million for 222 units of housing. Iowa Valley Habitat for Humanity. So we love home ownership when we can, when it's presented to us, 2 homes with 4 to 5 bedrooms. Those serve the below 80%. Systems Unlimited put in to buy a home, and they did, to serve 3 people below 30%. The Housing Fellowship applied for a home with 4 to 5 bedrooms to serve those with incomes below 60%. Together We Grow proposes 168 apartments on the west side. And we did quite a bit of pushing on this developer. We encourage them, requiring them to have more 40% units, and including up to 3 bedrooms. They asked for 15 years of affordability. We countered with 30 years of affordability, trying to get the most out of each dollar that we get to invest. The North Liberty Apartments, 48 apartments for people with incomes below 40% and 60%. 6 projects drew money for $1.7 million so far in the 6 months. Helping Hands, that's the grant for rehabilitation. Iowa City Sober Living opened a home for women coming out of substance abuse treatment, and they're doing great. Systems Unlimited rehabbed a property. This was the final payment on a property rehab for Systems. Systems Unlimited drew that money that we provided for a home, so they're already in. And then the DVIP shelter, $448,000 for their new shelter. That's of their $750,000 in total in awards. And that, I would invite questions now or later. I'm always at your disposal. I don't know what AMI is. Call me, email me. Facebook, Twitter.
Great.
I would have a question,
Yes.
and it's one I think I ask every single time. How can we get local builders and developers to be building and developing these affordable housing units? I know that they all come from out of state, and they all use subcontractors. They buy their supplies from out of state. They are not buying from our local lumber yards. How
No,
can we?
Where's Simon? Simon's building a house right now. What are you talking about? They're not all from out of state. They're not. Habitat's
Not
building
all
a
of
house.
them.
Habitat's
A lot.
building a house right now.
Well, yes, Habitat, but like
Right.
those large developments, I mean, they're
The trust fund supported the fellowships, Delray Ridge on Dubuque Street, which is a large project. So it's not all that. But I hear you. When
how can we get more?
How can we get local developers? When I visit with developers locally, sometimes the answer is, I don't need to incorporate affordable units because I can rent at the market rate. It's very tough.
I'm gonna say, how can we incentivize them to?
without being overly incentivized. Yes, it's hard. We're trying to play Carol, on the below market rate is really our sweet spot now. If we're gonna offer you something at 4%, that's a heck of a lot better than you're gonna get at 9% at the bank. Or I don't know what your rates are today, but yeah. Other questions?
Art's smiling.
Sorry,
Art's
Karen.
smiling. He's got something to say. He's muted though.
Art,
Yeah, I'm
Art,
muted.
speak up, unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. They're certainly not 4%. So that is definitely a great incentive. Ellen, I would ask, can you email me this presentation? I'd like to, there's some people here at the bank I'd like to give a little of this information to help, maybe help a little bit with what we can do.
Yeah, I'm happy to. And you know, I'm happy to go to your bank. Or email. I went to your bank to pick up bags once. Yep.
Thank you.
Bus tour sponsor. Yes.
Right.
Thanks, Art.
Thank you. Yes, no problem.
What else? People.
And we will also have,
My boss is on here, so make me look good, okay?
right,
Ellen,
we will also have a question and answer after,
Okay, thank you. Go. Matt,
Matt,
Hauge.
are you ready? Do you want to go? You're muted still, Matt.
Yeah, see, I told you that was I earlier I flagged who's the first time that I did that. Now I flagged the second time. I do want to start by finding out who you are. I am proud to be here from the Polk County Housing Trust Fund in Des Moines, Iowa. But there are a lot of folks who are off camera today. Will you at least drop your name and organization in the chat, or if you'd like to come off camera and introduce yourself? It's not every day they let me talk to our wonderful Johnson County friends, and I am so honored to be here with you virtually, but I would just love to know a little bit about who is part of the coalition. We've had such a wonderful experience getting to know Jess Andino, who is, you know, we call Jess and Ellen our Eastern Iowa friends, and we do it for a reason. But we want to make more Eastern Iowa friends, and we can't without your help. So thank you, everybody. So we've got Remy. See, we've got 2 University of Iowa social work practicum students from your Des Moines program who are over here right now. One of them who is just down the hall from me at this very moment, because you may know that the university has a social work program here. Eric is on the line from North Liberty. Eric, the last project I worked on in my last job at Community Housing Initiatives, a statewide developer of affordable housing, was Penn Oaks, which is directly north of your community center and public library in North Liberty. Ellen's nodding because I'm pretty sure the trust fund had money in that. We've got Catherine with Domestic Violence Intervention Program. Hello, hello, yes. Your new shelter. Who else? Anyone else? Access to Independence. Jasmine, I'd love to hear more about that organization. Hi, Katrina. Sorry to make everybody ring in. But it's just nice to get to meet you that way. And then John, who used to be on the JCAHC. That's the trust fund, or that's the Affordable Housing Coalition. You were former board member. They're nodding. Okay. And Erica, yeah, one of the things that I have sitting on my desk, this is my stack of memoranda about Iowa City policy changes over the last year. I have been in this office at night watching Iowa City Council meetings as y'all have done zoning reform, as y'all have advanced what I believe to be the state's leading ADU policy, as y'all have considered policies like impact fees to help make sure you're getting affordable housing, inclusionary development as part of your package of developments that are going on in town. So your city government is working hard to incentivize folks to create that affordable housing. You're the leaders in the state, as far as I can tell, in terms of actually having those expectations for your developers. Oh, I see. Yes, Center for Independent Living. Thank you, Jasmine. Okay, well, I will go into my talk. Like I say, my name is Matt Hauge. I'm the Outreach and Communications Director for the Polk County Housing Trust Fund. I'm going to try to share my screen. I had a crisis here. while I was closing the too many tabs that I had open, I managed to vaporize my PowerPoint, which was not cool, but you can see here the presentation is either deleted or not currently available. So I'm going to be preaching today from a web browser. Can you see on my screen the trust fund's website? Andy, I can see you. Would you give a thumbs up? You can see that. Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about my notes. And you're going to watch me go through this because I'm actually going to preach from a lot of resources that are on our website. The Polk County Housing Trust Fund is Ellen's ally. We are one of there. So there are actually 26 local housing trust funds all around the state. Many of us serve one or more counties. There are a couple that are attached to cities. We're a lively and cantankerous bunch. You can just imagine how fun we all are to hang around with at parties, your local housing trust fund people. We do all belong to a network. We pay a small amount of money into a lobbyist fund every year to look at housing funding issues around the state. So we have some connection with one another, but we're largely independent. There are many features of your local housing trust funds that are consistent across the state. For example, we're funded largely the same way that you are there. The Polk County Housing Trust Fund, it was mentioned in the introduction, has a relationship with the Polk County Board of Supervisors. They were actually the entity that founded us. Today, we have a 28E agreement with the Polk County Board of Supervisors that provides the trust fund $1.5 million each year. That money covers the bulk of our operating expenses and the staff of the trust fund. There are 6 of us here. And it also, Ellen is smiling. And, we didn't create the 20E, Ellen. We are just the beneficiaries of it. I see some people, there's some activity here. People are noticing this. Yes. The trust fund is because Polk County is the largest recipient of state housing trust fund dollars because we have the largest population of any trust fund. Thanks to the advocacy of the trust fund network and other folks, including some of you on this call, the allocation that we receive from the State Housing Trust Fund just recently crossed over $1 million a year. There is additional advocacy going on to continue to increase that funding. And then the Polk County Housing Trust Fund also has a fundraising campaign. Our fundraising campaign is called Stable, Steady, Strong. Stable, Steady, Strong does a whole bunch of housing stability funding. So it funds homeownership, counseling, and education. It funds parts of centralized intake and the homeless intake system. It funds a whole variety of housing stability programs, rapid rehousing programs, all sorts of different things. There were about $689,000 in grants distributed from Stable, Steady, Strong in our last fiscal year. And fundraising is actively going on for that now. So if you ever in Des Moines and want to drop a penny in the basket, we will hold it out for you. So, in many ways, much the same way, whereas you all have the benefit of the primary difference there is where you have the benefit of receiving funds from Iowa City and Johnson County. We receive funds only from Polk County. And that's because there's actually a requirement in local trust fund rules that we receive a certain percentage of local match to draw down those state housing trust fund dollars. So it's not just academic that we receive that local support. It's required in order for us to access our state funds. So we are always on the mission to increase local support for other trust funds around the state and to encourage local governments and partners to get folks drawing down those dollars. So many of you who work for banks or financial institutions that serve a larger territory, you can help be an advocate in, as you deal with communities across Eastern Iowa. Housing is a huge struggle out there. And you can be encouraging your local elected officials and community leaders to be putting that local support into their state housing trust funds to make sure that they are drawing down those state resources and getting dollars out into the community. It doesn't happen in some of our communities without your activism and support out there. So just remember, we're not only looking at the State House, we're also looking at our local support issue. We are, like you, one of the communities in this counties in the state that has the largest struggle for folks to afford the place that they live. The situation here is that, well, I'm going to show you this. So now I'm going to teach from, I'm just going to kind of teach with the whiteboard here a little bit. On our website, one of the things that I like is we have this resource called the Housing Policy Reading Room. And pretty much everything Matt knows as a report is available here. And so after this talk, if you come through this and take a look at it, you can get access to most of the resources that I talk from in my outreach out there. And so one of the things I want to highlight is this report, which we put out on affordable and available homes in Polk County, Iowa. Many of us around the state are kind of familiar with the National Low-Income Housing Coalition in Washington, D.C. That is a national advocacy organization that does a really outstanding job helping people understand the need for supporting our extremely low-income renter population out there. These are the folks who are struggling the most to find a place to live. They provide really excellent data in a national report that's called The Gap, which will tell you a lot about just how hard it is for folks to find housing out there. But they will also provide county level data for all 99 counties if you request it from them. And we did, and we kind of blew that out into a report explaining a lot of the details of how their calculation works. But the most key calculation that the National Low Income Housing Coalition provides is they look at the same CHAZ data that Ellen talked about earlier, but they run an analysis on it to not only look at how many units do you have that are affordable to a certain segment of their population. They also look at who's occupying those units and whether the households with that income are actually in a unit that's affordable to them, which is an additional layer onto analyzing that CHAZ data that the National Low Income Housing Coalition refers to as looking at the number of units that are affordable and available for that renter population. And so this is 1 year old. Ellen's right. The current version of this data is 2020, but on the screen is 2019. I had this in a cute PowerPoint slide, but this is the same chart. In Polk County, with the 2019 data, there were 23 rental homes that were both affordable and available for rent by people earning at or under 30% of the area median income. Now, this is the segment of the population that we talk about all the time. It's the same segment Ellen's most concerned about. These are folks, households earning between $20,000 and let's say $29,000 a year, depending on how many people live in the household. And these folks are working people. They work service industry jobs. They work caring profession jobs very often. They're working in child care centers or daycare centers. They're working, caring for the elderly. They're caring for people with disabilities. They're cleaning buildings. They're cleaning houses, this kind of thing. And so these are the people who really, to be honest with you, the other chart that's available in this report looks at housing cost burden, the people who are paying more than 30% of their income toward housing. And when you're down in this income band, it's about 90% of people who are not only cost burden, but close to that number who are paying more than half their income toward rent. So when you're paying more than half your income toward rent, there's nothing left over for other necessities, transportation, childcare, other necessities of life. And that's why families are left in such a state of financial precarity. You can see in this chart, though, another feature of rental markets in our state that I want you to notice, which is that the problem changes dramatically as a household's income increases. So on this same chart, you can see that at 50% of AMI, which is a commonly used threshold in our business, there are 82 homes that are affordable and available to 100 renter households. And when you get up toward the market rate, which is at 80% of the area median income or 100%, which is what's typical in the area, you actually find a small surplus. So some people will argue, well, there's not much of a housing shortage in Iowa. Boy, that's a whole second PowerPoint. We get into housing supply issues. But what I want to emphasize to people is just the market conditions that low-income people live in are vastly different than the market conditions at or above market rate, especially in our renter communities. And that's something that that unless you really focus on the needs of this population, you will not see their problems in the data. Another thing about the Housing Policy Reading Room, you can filter it. Wow, I have 3 different. We have several things that are in this category, but 3 different cost of living calculators that are on here that I always kind of like to talk about. One of the things that in housing, every once in a while, you'll hear about the Alice report. Alice is a report by the United Way. The United Ways of Iowa have commissioned this. It's loading slowly. Alice stands for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. And the record will say that I did that without looking at notes. The Alice population is a broader attempt to look at who's struggling financially in Iowa. So I just drilled down the attention of this group on 30 percenters, those extremely low income renters. And I said they face the most severe struggle to afford the place they live. But the Alice report has just been updated actually last year. It had been several years since it had been updated. So now it used to be a giant PDF that you would get from your United Way. Now it's a whole website, which is unitedforalice.org. Again, this is linked from that housing policy reading room, and you can get the Iowa snapshot. What I like about this, if you're really kind of thinking a lot about what is in the household budget of families in the state, it actually has here, I'm trying not to move this, I don't want to give you motion sickness, but there's this household survival budget, which is here that talks about, and to my way of thinking, these are very lowball optimistic estimates for housing and rent, but it just talks about the package of expenses. And so if you look through this website, you can really start to see for folks who are struggling financially in our state, how little is left over for those other expenses, because as we often say in the business, the rent eats first. So I really encourage you to check that out. You can see on here that the Alice survival budget for Johnson County is listed. They actually calculate how, based on expenses in your area, how much you need to make in order to afford your living situation. And I just hovered over Johnson County because you can see for one adult, that living wage is $27,912 a year. And then there's different family configurations that are listed there. And you will find that this is going to help you understand a lot more of the financial conditions of folks that Ellen is talking about. Because especially if you have kids, and it'll show you on here 2 adults and 2 school-age children, they need $64,104 a year. Well, for many of our 30 percenters, they don't come near that high in income. And so you can start to see how those situations break down in those scenarios. And I always think sometimes when we talk about AMI bans and all of this, it's a little bit easy to not have a human face on who the people are and kind of what they're up against. So I've been really trying lately to kind of encourage people to look up their United Way Alice numbers and to realize that this is much better than it used to be in terms of getting that county level data for your community. I'm going to quickly touch on a few other issues that are important. That there were great slides about this. There was this really fun slide that talked about taking some of the recent permanent supportive housing projects that the shelter house has developed over there. I had a picture of it where I had put it on a little cartoon of a trailer, and it said that our secret plan was to bring your permanent supportive housing over here to Des Moines. And then I put on it, it said, don't show this to anyone from Johnson County. And that was supposed to be a funny joke. So that's just one of the things that unfortunately you don't get to see, but I laughed a lot while I was making that. One of the things that I want to touch on that we have done recently, our continuum of care, there was this, last week it was already mentioned, the Gazette did this week-long series of conversations about homelessness. Our continuum of care here in Polk County that serves the unhoused population is called Homeward Iowa. Homeward Iowa is based down the hall from our office. Just last week, they put out a new report, which is kind of buried on here, but it is called, I'm going to totally find it, the Polk County Gap Analysis. There it is. And the Polk County Gap Analysis was an evidence-based way to bring someone in to really analyze our system related to homelessness. This is a really interesting issue because I'm kind of blending things together now, but last week we came together because we had a bill filed at the legislature, which for the first time would criminalize unsheltered homelessness in Iowa, which kind of united all of us in horror because we don't have enough housing for people to go into. And so if you start tacking on misdemeanor charges and fines for our unhoused people, the situation that they're in quickly becomes untenable. And it was interesting that we saw that bill filed at the legislature at the same time. It was just a week after this report was issued by Homeward Iowa. So I would encourage you to consider looking that up and taking a read through it. It's relevant to you because also it's all been happening in this space in the last few days. The Iowa Finance Authority has granted funds so that the state of Iowa will also have a homeless needs assessment done using a very similar methodology to this one. So coming up here pretty soon, we're going to have a much higher resolution picture of the need for units and services within the homelessness system kind of on a statewide basis. And that's a big deal. So, that's kind of some breaking news in the homelessness space, which, as you know, we're housing. Homelessness is a slightly different issue. It has a slightly different response. But when we're looking at the incomes that we're trying to serve in the trust fund world, these are people who are in extremely precarious situations and can often end up crossing that line to homelessness. Another thing that I wanted to bring up that I just really strongly recommend, and I am mindful of the time. I'm going to wrap up here in a minute or two. But sorry, you can tell I was looking at their website earlier to get my cute cart picture, and oh well. You may be familiar with the publication called Shelter Force. Who's heard of Shelter Force? You get their newsletter. You can follow them. Yeah, Ellen does. Well, that's another voice for the movement. The team at Shelter Force did this really great series called LIHTC, how it started, how it's going. LIHTC, the low-income housing tax credit, is producing the lion's share of affordable housing across the country. It's actually hard to calculate the exact number, but it's something like 80 or 90% of income restricted units across the country are actually supported by this one program. And it's a super quirky program. Many of you will be very familiar with it, but some of you will not, because it's quite a Byzantine, complicated program. You could be forgiven for not knowing anything about it, really. But I really would encourage folks who are thinking, what is going to generate this housing? How are we going to get developers to do it? We already had the question how we can incentivize developers to do more. Because LIHTC is such a key driver of unit production, what this program does and how it functions actually is a really key driver of what happens in our communities. And so you can even hear all of the different stories that they wrote in this series as audio episodes. And for people like us who aren't necessarily we're not all professional finance people all the time, I can't encourage you enough to go and take a look through this series on Shelter Force to become kind of informed about what this program is. There are a couple of articles in this series that deal specifically with pending federal legislation to improve and extend the reach of the low-income housing tax credit. There's a lot of advocate opinions on what's working and what's not working in this program. And so that's a thing I wanted to make a really big plug for today too, is just getting more people educated about what LIHTC is, because like it or not, it's a huge part of the system we have. And I promise I'm really running down toward the end. Ellen is correct that at this time there are legislative efforts that are meant to increase funding for housing. One would provide about another, probably we think $2 or $3 million a year into the housing trust fund system. So you can find out about that legislation. We do keep kind of a list of some of the bills that we're most interested in on our website at pchtf.org/advocate. So you can find a little bit of information about the State Housing Trust Fund. We are also members of the Iowa Housing Partnership, which is an organization that does state advocacy. So they're more informed on a lot of these issues. But Jess was nice enough to come to, we have a United Way group that meets to go through a bill tracker. We track all housing related legislation in the state collaboratively with some of our friends. We invited Jess to come to that. I noticed in the board report that y'all received today, you actually got a little bit of detail of what she observed when she was in that meeting. So, as I've been calling you my Eastern Iowa friends relentlessly, I do want you to know that we would be happy to include you in things like that, or collaborate with you, or reach across the state, because the problems we have in our communities are actually pretty similar. And then the last thing, and I promise I'm done, we do an annual event here at the Trust Fund where we bring in a speaker, and we're about to open registration for it, but we haven't quite opened it. It'll open next week. but secretly the registration is already there if you know where to go. If you go to housingmatters.eventbrite.com, housingmatters.eventbrite.com, you can register for this event. It is coming up at the end of April. It is over here in Des Moines. Last year, we had Ann Russett, one of your city planners, come over and actually speak at this. She did an amazing job. If you don't love Ann, write her a note today. I want you to write to Ann Russett and tell her Matt Hauge loves her. And I want you to write to Chrissy Canganelli and tell her Matt Hauge loves her. Those are two people that I never get to see in meetings, yet always want to pass messages to. So please, Eastern Iowa friends, make that happen. Ann came and spoke last year. This year, our speaker, her name is Jenny Schutz. Jenny is a Brookings Institution fellow and national expert in land use policy, but also in meeting the needs of the population that we've talked about. She wrote a great book called Fixer Upper, How to Repair America's Broken Housing Systems. And so my last slide even had a little picture of a minivan, and it was like, we invite you to load up the Johnson County minivan and make a plan to come over to Des Moines for this event. The event is Friday, April 26th, and I've said into the recording several times, if you go to housingmatters.eventbrite.com, you can register for free now. So we'd love to see you. I know you have to get up pretty early to make it here in time for this, but it's not terrible bad. So that's it. That went long a little bit, but those are just some things that again, there would have been like animations and stuff, but you got to look at my face and my web browser. I would take any questions. I can hang around for a little bit if anybody has any questions. But you know, to be honest with you, I didn't get very far into our own funding programs either, and that's really because you should deal locally. You've got a really great housing trust fund. Ellen's one of the best. If you come to our website at pchtf.org/apply, you can find the rules for all of our funding programs, but they're fairly similar in scope and effect. That information is all posted online. I'll take questions anytime you want, but always, you know, like I say, your local person is really the expert on what's available in your community. So we want to be respectful of that. If there are any questions, I'd love to hear from you. Hit me up anytime, mhauge@pchtf.org. I'm over there every once in a while. I rode around in Ann Russett's car and we drove around and looked at your housing and she told me all about it. So I may even be in your community at some upcoming time. We really do like you guys and care about you and have great respect for all the hard work that you're doing. So we are honored to be here and thank you for being part of this meeting.
Matt, are you a big part of rehabbing homes and helping with all of that as well?
Yeah. So the Polk County Housing Trust Fund allocates about $600,000 annually to organizations that do that. I think I turned off screen sharing, but let me put it back on for 1 second because we just did a new thing that really exposes what we're up to. Oh my goodness, I'm never going to get better.
While he does that, could you put your email in the chat for me? Because you asked me to send you something.
I will do that. Thanks.
Thank you.
So if you go to our website and go to pchtf.org/OOR, OOR for owner occupied repair, we had a survey and we asked our owner occupied repair partners to fill out a survey of information about their programs. And so here you can actually find their listings. The Polk County Housing Trust Fund contributes funds to pay a portion of repairs, not all of, but a portion of repairs for several of these programs, including through our Habitat. There's a City of Des Moines program that's called ION. In the suburbs, it's called Metro Home Improvement Program. Neighborhood Finance Corporation is its own thing. We fund 2 Polk County programs, and we fund Rebuilding Together of Greater Des Moines in this year's round, but you'll see there are a couple of other things on here as well. So if you really want the picture of owner occupied repair, which is a big business for trust funds across the state, you can find out what we're doing by going to pchtf.org/OOR. And yeah, so that's a lot of it. There's a couple of new smaller programs. We're going to expand this resource, but that's a good way of finding out who they are, what their rules are, and that kind of thing. It's about $600,000 of our resources every year go into that.
I just think it's so important for us to be rehabbing some of these homes that are there. And obviously that's a big effort as well, and just really needed in all of our communities.
That's true, Mary. And Ellen said it in her part of the talk that we don't talk enough about OOR. Actually put this part of the website together so that we would be talking about it more. You know, there's a huge, just a huge relationship in Iowa. More affordable housing just tends to be older housing, right? So the condition and some of the safety features, lead-based pipes, lead-based paint, all sorts of things are highly correlated. So a lot of our vulnerable families are living in older housing that's lower cost, and so they may really not be able to afford those upgrades. Actually, there was a really good Shelter Force article about that whole phenomenon not too long ago as well. But it is essential to helping people stay in their home when they own their home long term, helping them pay for that critical repairs.
And then just to get to Carol's point, obviously, when we rehab homes, we're more likely to use our local contractors and builders and lumber and all of those things that are so important in rebuilding and refurbishing a home. So I was just going to mention that too, because I think it helps with helping out our local businesses too.
Yep, I agree with you completely. Contractor availability is one of the huge bugaboos across the housing world. So our providers, so one of the things that makes us unique is we're only funding out to providers who are doing the OOR. For example, I'm not hiring contractors here in this office, which is a little different than how some trust funds do it. We just have more players. And so we're not a player. We just provide money to people who are. But they all have their own efforts underway to try to preference local folks and work with local folks. It's always good when you can do it. And I'm proud to say a lot of our providers do value that.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I know we're keeping you a little over time, but we do value you and the opportunity to speak with you.
Any questions for either Matt or Ellen?
Now, I am hoping to get an email later from either Ann or from Chrissy saying, we heard you were talking about me. Okay, so I'm counting on you.
All right.
All right.
And it was in a favorable way, and it was good.
I'll take Chrissy. I don't
Okay.
have Ann's email.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right. Well, I am going to share one more time here. And I want to say thank you to our sponsors, because without them and our members, we could not do any work, much less all the good work that we do get to do. So thank you for that. And to remind you one more time, please mark your calendars. Thursday, March 21st from 4 to 6 at the greenhouse. It'll be a good time. We've got a good plan in place. And when I say we, I mean Jessica. Don't worry, I'm not planning the social event. That would be awkward. But Jessica is doing a great job with that, and so we will be we'll do that. We will not be having an online community meeting in March because we are hoping to see you all here or there at the greenhouse on the 21st. And finally, if you are not a member, please become a member. We would love to have you join us. And there's a nice little web link there. You can also find us on Facebook or all the social places. And there's links involved or links around all that to get you involved. So I believe that is the end of the program today, unless anybody has anything else they would like to say. And I'll try to stop screen sharing here so we can say goodbye.
I was just going to say for the ADUs, the group that put all that together will be meeting on Monday at 1:30, the Johnson County Housing Action Team,
Awesome.
which Jessica joins us in that. And so if anyone wants to join us, you can reach out to Jeff Kelbaugh with Johnson County.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Carol. All righty. Thanks for sticking around. We appreciate it, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.